Welcome back, my delightful little ghouls and goblins. I'm Taylor, your casual neighborhood crypt keeper. It's time for us to take a little tour of some of the most haunted spots in the world. Take my proverbial hand and let's take a trip. Here's top 5 haunted places that historians fear, part 2. Any of these seem like a good spot for your next vacation? Drop a comment down below telling me where you'd love to visit, where you couldn't get paid to go. Let's dive on in. Number 5, Island of the Dolls. The Island of the Dolls is a peculiar small island just off the coast south of Mexico City. The island is covered, well, absolutely blanketed in hanging dolls. Just about everywhere on the small landmass. I probably don't even need to really delve into any of the lore behind this island for you to believe that it's cursed. You can just take a look at it and understand. I mean, it's a secluded, abandoned island inhabited exclusively by dilapidated dolls. What do you need? Don Julian Santana Barrera was a man who had isolated himself from the rest of Mexico City, choosing instead to live alone on this small, meager island. His world would be thrown upside down when he discovered a body laying on the shore one day. Shortly following the discovery, a doll washed up on shore as well, having come in from the channel. This event would change Barrera's life forever. Barrera hung the doll up on the island, believing that this would appease the spirit of the girl and set her free. Well, either it didn't work, or he believed he needed a bit of extra protection, because for the rest of his life, Barrera made it his mission to hang as many dolls as he could across the island, scavenging them from the channel, some from the trash, wherever he could find them, until the island's reputation preceded it. And what was once a small, private residence became the infamous Island of the Dolls. Barrera's story would be cut short in 2001, when his body was discovered in the channel floating, just like the doll all those years ago. But his legacy far from ended there. The island has become a notorious tourist destination, only attainable by a boat out of Mexico City. While most guides are happy to take you, there are some who outright refuse the journey for fear of spirits. It's said that if you are to visit, it's best to bring a doll, to appease whoever could still be living there. Ugh. I kind of ran a tingle down my spine, and that's just number 5. Now if you want more stories like that, we have them coming every single day, hot and fresh. All you've got to do is subscribe and creep on creeping on. Let's keep going. Number 4, the Stanley Hotel. Who doesn't love a nice stay at a good hotel, you know? Someone to tend to your needs, breakfast ready for you wake up, and a TV where you'll flick through the channels for half an hour before settling on Ghostbusters 2, because that's the only thing that's on. Let me introduce you to the Stanley Hotel, one of America's most beautiful resorts. Built in 1909 next to the picturesque Rocky Mountains in Colorado, the Stanley Hotel is a great place to get away from it all. It's isolated away from the rest of the world, and if you're starting to wonder why this hotel seems a bit familiar to you, maybe if I called it the Overlook Hotel, it might come together? Yeah, the Stanley Hotel is the original inspiration for the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. Stephen King found the inspiration for his famous haunted hotel after spending a cursed night in room 217, the haunted room from the novel. Amusingly, while the Stanley Hotel served as the actor of sorts for the Overlook in the TV series, it didn't for Stanley Kubrick's legendary adaptation. In that, the hotel standing in for the Overlook asked that room 217 not be used in the film, as it was a real operating room and the hotel was afraid it would lose business, so they changed it to the non-existent room 237 for the legendary Kubrick picture. Now, I could do IMDb trivia about Stanley Kubrick movies all day. What makes the Stanley Hotel so scary? Well, it goes without saying that it's said to be a haunted hotel. All manners of hauntings have been reported. Eerie laughter, unexplained noises, ghostly apparition, things moving on their own, and so forth. Now, the Stanley Hotel embraces its status as a haunted hotel with gleeful open arms. Ghost hunters are invited to stay in their spirited rooms that are purported to have higher levels of supernatural activity. Unsurprisingly, these are the most booked rooms in the entire hotel. Stephen King recounts that the direct events that inspired The Shining was that while he was visiting the hotel, he was terribly afraid of its isolation and its eeriness, describing eating alone in its giant dining hall, hearing quiet orchestral music played over the speakers in a room distant. Apparently, staying there gave him terrible nightmares of his son being chased by some invisible presence. He says as soon as he woke up from the first one, he lit a cigarette and began to write The Shining then and there. Now my advice for you if you ever take a trip to the Stanley Hotel, make sure you got lots and lots to keep yourself busy with, but make sure you get some time to play. You know what they say about all work and no play, right? Number 3, Eastern State Penitentiary, Philadelphia. Now some of the wisest men I've ever met have said that it's always sunny in Philadelphia. But if you were one of the doomed souls interred into Eastern State Penitentiary, it was anything but. Eastern State wanted to run things a little differently than the standard American prison system, dubbing their system of punishment the Pennsylvania system, or whack and use John's Philly style, depending on who was asking at the time. The Pennsylvania system refers to imposing the prisoners to solitary confinement all the time. Prisoners lived alone, exercised alone, ate alone, and were only ever accompanied by guards. When being escorted anywhere, the guards would put a black hood over inmates. Unsurprisingly, this was not a terribly popular system. Eventually collapsed inward on itself due to overcrowding, and the program was abandoned in 1913, just 5 years after the prison was constructed. Although this didn't really do much to improve conditions for the inmates there, and really just led the prison to come up with new terrible creative methods of inhumane treatment, such as chaining prisoners' tongues to their wrists, or strapping prisoners to chairs for days on end, dousing prisoners in freezing cold water, and putting the worst prisoners into a pit affectionately dubbed the Hole, where they would be kept in the dark for weeks at a time. In 1970, after decades of terror, Eastern State closed its gates only to creep them back open as a tourist destination for dark tourists looking to go ghost hunting. A place like this is bound to be home to all sorts of rumors and spirits, right? Well, according to local legends, if you spend a night in Eastern State on one of their Halloween tours, you'll hear all kinds of disembodied laughter, screaming and crying, ghostly figures moving across the walls, and unexplained footsteps. Enjoy the sights. Just make sure the gate doesn't lock behind you. And while we're still on this one, does anybody else think that this could stand to be the best premise for an episode of Always Sunny, like, ever? The gang goes to jail, the gang gets haunted. If anybody knows Danny DeVito's agent, please DM us. Number 2, the Hellfire Club. Don't get too excited. The party won't be meeting Eddie Munson for a D&D session anytime soon at this Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club in Dublin, otherwise known as Montpelier Hill, was once home to a hunting lodge in the 17th century, owned by one Richard Parsons, a man obsessed with black magic and the occult. It's said that the Hellfire Club was a club for Satanists, as the leader was referred to as the King of Hell and would dress like the devil himself during meetings. Every meeting of the Hellfire Club, they left one seat open at the table, just in case Lucifer wanted to drop by. Stories go on to say that members of the Hellfire Club participated in all manner of dark and sinister ritual, sacrificing cats, goats, and if the legends are to be believed, even servants of the Hellfire Club themselves were offered. Legend has it that one fateful day, a strange man appeared in the middle of the night and asked if he could join in at the card game that they were playing for the night. As there was always an open seat, they decided to offer it to him. During the game, a player dropped his cards, and when he went underneath the table to retrieve his hand, they saw that the strange man they had invited had hooves in place of feet, and upon rising from the table, the stranger had vanished into a burst of flame. The building was scorched and set ablaze in 1750, with many differing accounts as to what caused the flame. Some say it was the club itself that set the building on fire to give a more intimidating appearance and keep out outsiders. Some say the devil himself did it, and some say it was a duel that ended badly. Whatever the cause, the Hellfire Club relocated their activities sometime in 1760, and the original building is left empty, where it still stands today. You can visit it today, and it's a fairly popular tourist destination for urban explorers and paranormal investigators who want to see if maybe there's any residual black magic in the soil and walls there. Number 1, Poveglia. This list really has me all kinds of freaked out, reading about all these wretched places. I think we need to focus on a nice island getaway. Why not the island of Poveglia? The forbidden island off the coast of Venice. I knew it was going to be haunted. I wrote this list. Poveglia is an infamous island in Italian history, once serving as a quarantine zone and final resting place for the unfortunate victims of the Black Plague. As the plague ravaged Europe and paranoia set in across the lands, it was said that anyone who showed so much as the slightest symptoms were shipped off to Poveglia to live out the rest of their days. Oftentimes, these people would be sent away without even truly being sick, dooming them to a horrific fate. It's said that over 50% of the island's soil is made of burned human ash. That is terrifying. The ground itself is haunted. In the early 19th century, the island was converted from a quarantine zone to a just as terrifying mental asylum, switching gears a little bit because apparently being host to one setting for a horror movie wasn't quite enough. The asylum did nothing to improve Poveglia's haunted reputation. Instead of being home to the sick now, it was the home to droves of mentally disturbed patients who were made into unsuspecting victims by a doctor's experiments. Doctors of the asylum would impose their patients into lobotomies with no concern for sanitation or the victim's safety. The legend has it that the lead doctor at the asylum, who ran these twisted experiments, was so haunted by the spirits of his former patients that it drove him to such madness he cast himself over the tower of the island where his screams can still be heard. It's been said the island is home to countless tortured abandoned souls, still screaming. Now, if for some reason I told you all of that and you're thinking, I really want to visit, first of all, why? And second of all, you're gonna need to be pretty crafty, as the island is completely forbidden. You'll be pressed to the fullest extent of the law if you're caught trespassing into Poveglia. Not even remotely worth the risk, if you ask me. At best, you get arrested. At worst, I got no idea. Well, that's all for this video, my delightful little ghouls and goblins. It was fun as always. Creep it real, and I'll see you in the next one.